Hey everyone, it's your average chess player here. Today we are gonna look at this endgame position. I've been doing an endgame series on my channel, so if you like endgames, you're at the right place. It is White's turn to play, and we need to figure out if it is gonna be a winning endgame for White or it's just gonna be a draw. We could also blunder and lose the game, but let's not. Let's hope we don't do that. Feel free to pause the video here and find the best winning sequence for White. If you think you found the solution, feel free to skip ahead to the solution part of the video, which is towards the end. I'll leave timestamps in the description. And if you think you don't know the solution, or if you think you found the wrong solution, follow along and let's get in for the ride. I'm gonna show how I solved this position and what nuances that I've noticed, what mistakes I did, and we're gonna have some fun. There are a lot of mini variations in this position, so I'm gonna try my best to cover as much as I can, and I don't want to make the video too long. So if I don't cover something in the video, I apologize in advance. Feel free to solve the variations I missed outside this video. Um, Fun. So let's start. We're just gonna go through some candidate moves first before we look at a plan. I didn't really have a plan when I started this. The moves like king c5, king d5, and king e5, they all in this setup they all lose to the move e3. So if I play something like king e5, black can just play king like e3 and queen first. There's not much I can do here. I cannot queen my own pawn. Black will queen first. So all these moves, like we just lose them in favor of e3. And something like king c3, again e3, I have to catch up to this pawn now with king d3 and d4, and we reach the same thing. I cannot take the pawn here because of e2, and black will queen first. So let's go back. And the pawn moves here with g7. Black can play king f7 and dance between these two squares and not really let us make any progress. And we cannot move our king forward because of e3. And if we play f7 in this position, black can play king g7 and dance between these two squares. Again, we cannot go forward because of e3. So all these moves are like a clear-cut draw or a clear-cut loss. There's no two ways about it. Which leaves us with only one more legal move, which is just king e3. And this is the only move that has to be winning, because everything else is an immediate draw. So here black has two options, king f8 and king h8. King d, like d4 check, I can just take the pawn, so not even think about that. We're gonna see the move king f8, because since I know the solution, king h8 also kind of transposes into the same position. We can look at it towards the end if we have time. So king f8, and here the most intuitive move that I had was king f4, because I was still afraid to move my pawns forward. So king f4 was the first move that I thought. And if black here now plays something like king g8, I wanted to play the move king e5 to see if I made any progress, but I actually didn't. So it's e3 is still losing. So I cannot move my king forward. And a move like f7 check, black can play king g7 and keep dancing between these two squares, because if I come forward for any reason, e3 is again losing, because if I play king e6, I'm still one square away from queening, and black will queen first. The same position that we saw earlier. So king f4, like something like f7, and I was like, okay, so this is a draw. And with g7, again king f7 is a draw, because black will again be dancing between these two squares. And if I try something tricky like king g5, e3, now I play king h6 because I have access to that square, e2 and king h7, black queens I queen. This is black is a pawn up, and if anyone's playing for a win, it is black, and there's no checkmate trick for me here, and I shouldn't blunder with queen takes d5, because black can play queen h4, king g8 check, queen g7 check, and queen e7 mate. So it's like a forced mate if I blunder, so I just have to keep checking the black king. So that doesn't work either. So we're gonna go back. So here, something like king f4 after king g8, nothing works. So this is all like a bit confusing, because I was like, okay, king e3, king f4 seems the most intuitive thing. So if none of those moves work, we're gonna go back. We're gonna again look at this position with king e3. What if I play, instead of king f4, I just play the move g7 or f7, and we're just gonna look at those moves now. So g7 first. King g8 is a draw, and surprisingly, the first variation that I calculated here was king f7 and not king g8. Because in all the previous positions, if I can go back, when I was playing g7 here, king f7 was the move that kind of uh, subconsciously got imprinted in my head. So after playing a move like g7, king f7 was my first intuition, but king f7 actually loses. And it was beneficial for me to calculate this, because I'll show you why. After king f4, king g8, black cannot give up the g8 square because I'll queen. And I can play the same idea with king g5, which I was doing earlier. Here, it is okay again to get away from this black pawn. Because of e3, I can play this move king g6 and e2, and we have this beautiful checkmate with f7. And when I started this position, I did not really realize that there is a pawn checkmate available in the position for us. And this is a nice little detail and a pattern to remember. And in this position specifically, this pattern is something we should be threatening to gain squares or prevent black from pushing his pawn. So also note that if black plays king h7 here, I can always play something like king f5 just to waste a move, and after king g8, I can play king g6. Uh, so it's just and if you play e3 here, I can go this way now, and if you play e2, I can just play king f7, queens, and it's mate in two. So everything works. It's just again like too many variations to look at, but in this specific scenario, if black is greedy with e3, checkmate. But if he wants to be tricky, you can always play king f5. So, but king g8, again going back to this position, king f7 is losing, and king g8 is the only move to draw. Now you can't really make any progress if you play king f4, king f7, and it's the same position that we saw earlier with king f4 first and then g7. So going back, which leaves us with only one move, which is not a clear-cut draw, and that is f7. Here again, black has two moves with his king e7 and g7. Uh, from what I realized, both moves kind of transpose into each other. So we will look at king e7 because it looks trickier than king g7, or at least for me. And here I played the move king f4, and black has to keep control of the f8 square, so black will play king f8. Otherwise, I queen, or I can even play, if black steps too far away, I can even play g7 if I want to. So here, after king f8, what is the way to make progress? I saw king e5, king f6 with the idea of g7 if black tries to push. So if e3, king f6, and again black square king has no squares, and we run into the same pattern that we saw earlier. After e2, g7 is checkmate. So I wanted to play king e5, but then black has this, again, like you could say like a tricky move with king e7. Now here I cannot take on d5 because e3 is actually winning for black. I have no mate threats and I have no way to queen my pawns. So here I'll be forced to just play king d4, and we need to wait for black to go to f8. And the reason is now I can play king e5, it will be the same position. I can play king d5 now, with the main reason being after e3, king e6, you play e2, I have king f6, and we reach the same checkmate position. And in this position, if you play something like king g7, I can play king e7 because you still are away, two squares away from queening. And if you play e2, I can queen. And like whatever you do, I can just play something like queen f2 if I want to. and then I capture the pawn, and it's an elementary checkmate. So we can go back and we can just look at, so that is the one of the winning lines. We can also go back and see what happens if here king g7 is played. Can I still play the same sequence of moves? King f6 loses to pawn push. So let's say king f8, and I can just play king e5 and king e7. When we reach the same position, we reach similar position that we saw earlier, and we have to play king d4. And after king f8, uh, we take on d5. And if you play something like king e7 now or king g7 now, I can simply take this pawn, and I don't even I can be brave and play king e6 because I know this is a winning endgame. Or I can simply take the pawn, simplify it, and we know we are winning with these two pawns here. Black can never take this pawn because I'll queen first. A slightly optimal way to play this endgame after this position is just to play king d4 first, is what I realized. Because after king f8, I can immediately go for d5 and avoid all those shenanigans. So just in case. Uh, so that is a position, and I think we're just probably 10-11 minutes into the video, so we will just also look at the other winning line with king h8 just to show you how this kind of transposes into the same variation. Because f7, the only move is king g7, and I can play king d4 or f4. For efficiency, we'll play king d4, and after king f8, king d5, we reach the same position. And that is this endgame. It has all this small nuances, mini variations here and there, where black can go this way, that way, but at the end of the day, we reach and transpose into the same winning lines. So let's recap the solution. So if you just skip to this part of the video, here is the solution for you. White has the only move here, which is king e3, and depending on where black goes, white has the same plan. We transpose into the same variation as I showed in the video. We saw king f8 first, and after the only move here in this position, which is f7, which makes any real progress, black can play a move like king e7, and white can play either king f4 or d4, which again transposes into the same endgame. We're going to look at king f4 because it's just a bit more tricky. King f8 because black has to keep control of f8 and prevent the pawn from queening. After king e5, white is not afraid of e3 because king f6 and it is checkmate in the next move. After king e5, if black does play king e7, white cannot take this pawn because e3 is now winning for black because there's no checkmate and there's no way to support these pawns to queen. White should instead play king d4, wait a move for black to go back and then take on d5. Note, you could also transpose into the same position here with just king d4, forcing black to play king f8 and then take on d5, and it is the same position. You could just take on e4 and you're winning here. What an endgame! It's like simple, but at the same time, like I said, too many. It looks like there are too many variations to calculate, but they all kind of transpose into the same positions. And once you see the checkmate pattern, you know you can let go of that black pawn eventually because you have a mate there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like on this video if you like the video, and subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of content. I'll be making more in-game videos hopefully, and you come to the right place. So see you guys in the next one.